Have you ever had a shameover? Nope, not a hangover. It's a shameover. That's what we're talking about today on Unbroken. Shameovers and the cure for our shameovers. Do you have a not so perfect life? I mean, we may look like we have it all together, but the truth is we all have stuff. Unbroken provides a brave space where we women can take off the mask, share our secret struggles, and our secrets to success. Unbroken, doing life better together. Have you experienced a shameover? It's one of those times when you feel bad about something that you said or you did, and you just can't get over it. And you feel embarrassed, and then take it one step further to feeling shame. Hi, I'm Janeé. I love Jesus. I'm a family gal. I also do lots of different things for work. And one of my most favorite things I do is women and girls ministry. And this past weekend, I had the privilege of leading one of our women's retreats. And what I have experienced, not only in leading groups, but then also going to various groups, is that oftentimes in the moment, you feel vulnerable, you share, you get it all off your chest, and it feels so good. And then the next moment, you're like, what did I do? Girls, I have been there. And I think many of us can relate to kind of, I like to call them sharing hangovers, but it's when you share and you afterwards feel like you shared too much. And so sharing hangovers can lead to shameovers, where you just start to feel bad about yourself, place blame on yourself, shame, and there is no shame in the sharing game. But I do want to empathize with all of us that when we are vulnerable, which often comes in sharing, it can feel really yucky after the fact. And we can question what we said or did. We can even not want to go back to that group or see the person again in extreme cases, because we feel like we have said or done too much and there's just no recovery from it. And that's what I like to call a hashtag shameover. And it was so fun this weekend as I reminded the retreat participants that there is no shame in the sharing game. We talked through some cures for a shameover, and I want to just share them with you. The first one I would say is if you feel like you overshared in the moment, take a big, deep breath. For example, I have had times when I have overshared about family stuff. And family stuff specifically that was maybe not mine to share. I'm a big believer in getting things off of your chest. And if it's not only your story, but it involves other people too, we have to be really careful of the boundaries that we set in sharing so that we don't overshare and cause even more hurt in a situation. So like with my situation in the past, there's been some oversharing with family dynamics. And when it came out later, it really caused a lot of hurt. And I am not proud of that. And it certainly led to a shameover. But if you're feeling some guilt, remorse, any of that from something that you've shared or done, number one, take a big deep breath, because I know that for me, oftentimes when I'm feeling that way, I want to do something immediately. Don't do that. Take a big deep breath and even sleep on it. Number two, I would suggest that if you're feeling a shame over, try to identify what the yuckiness is about. What is causing that sick feeling? There was another time that I had shared some really, really, really past broken places in my own life. And after I shared those, I had a shame over. I was worried about what people might think about me. I thought that perhaps it could ruin my credibility because then there's the reality of not being perfect. Guess what? None of us are perfect. And for me, as the creator and founder of Unbroken, a platform for women where it's a brave space that we talk about our imperfections, I have to be willing to lead out, sharing my own imperfections. And what I learned for myself in that experience is that when I thought I had overshared something, one of my past mistakes, the Lord actually used it to help someone else. And that's not just in my life, that's actually biblical, that the Lord comforts us so that we can give that comfort to others. So if you have overshared something about yourself, realize that the Lord allowed that to happen. I didn't say He made it happen. He didn't make you share that, but the Lord allowed it to happen, and He can use it for good. I'm not trying to super spiritualize sharing and possibly oversharing. I am trying to remind us that when we share, it can help others. So, number one, pause and pray, even maybe sleep on it if you're feeling some shame over. Number two, identify what are you really, really upset about in terms of your sharing or doing. I can think of another situation when this was years ago. I had too much to drink and I kind of did verbal vomit on a business colleague. I wasn't unkind with the colleague, but I just was running my mouth about other people. And the next morning, I probably had both a hangover and a shame over. But what I did with that shame over, after pausing, after reflecting on what was yucky about that, in that situation, what was yucky is that I had talked about someone else behind their back. I realized that there was actually action I needed to take. And what that action looked like for me, I wrote that person a letter, that person that I had overshared with. And I said, hey, you know what? Last night, here's what I shared. Totally out of place for me to share that situation. I don't like to talk about other people and those types of situations. Will you forgive me? And then also, I'm going to be doing some things differently in my own life. And if you've been listening to me for a while, you may know that I made a decision years ago to quit drinking. And it was situations like that that led me to make that choice. I just felt like for me, alcohol was doing more harm than good at that time in my life. And I also felt like I was being called to women's ministry and I didn't want to cause anyone else to stumble. So I quit drinking. There is no judgment if you drink. Please know that. I'm just sharing with you what the choice I made for my own life. And the reason I'm sharing that today with you is because as it relates to shame over, sometimes there may be an action that we need to take to remedy our own shame over. In that situation, I chose to write a letter and I actually had a bigger action to take. And that was to quit drinking and to identify kind of the root of some of that choice to medicate, because I didn't feel good about myself when I did that. For each of us, shameovers are going to be different. What may cause guilt and shame for me may not cause guilt and shame for you, and that is okay. I think the important thing for each of us is to be in tune to what those things that cause us to not be the best version of ourselves, those things that make us feel bad about ourselves. And I want to speak just for a minute on the alcohol subject. If drugs, alcohol, any of that is something that doesn't give you a good feeling about yourself, that may be a good indicator that you need to stop doing it. And that's not just with drugs and alcohol, it's with anything. For me, it's also some music that I listen to or shows that I watch. There are times that I don't feel good about those choices. And that's really an opportunity for me to say, you know what, maybe I need to reevaluate what I'm watching or listening to if it's causing some prickly feelings inside of me. But specifically in terms of drugs and alcohol, if that's something you struggle with and you've tried to stop it and you can't, then you may need some extra help. And there is no shame in getting help, ever, 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 with any situation. My child goes to counseling. I also go to counseling. And someone said, I can't believe that you admit you go to counseling. And I said, what I have learned in my life is that when we can admit we're a little bit weak and we need help, that's actually a sign of strength. Today, I want you to think about those things in your life that are causing you to have some shameovers. And what are you being called to do? Pause when you have that shameover. Identify really what's the root, what's causing you to feel yucky about that decision. The third thing, if there's an action you need to take it and don't delay on that action. The biggest gift we have is the gift of the present. And that means we can choose to make a different choice today. And if it is something that is repeatedly causing you to feel prickly or just yuck about yourself, then you may need some additional help. And maybe you don't, I'm not saying if it's a big situation, it may not be that you need professional help. Let your friends in. For me, it's my God squad. Tell them about it. Biblically, when we confess our sins one to another and pray for one another, we are healed. And that is James 5:16. There is freedom and healing in uncovering those dark areas, those areas that cause us to have shameovers. And it's not comfortable to talk about it. I get it. One of the purposes of Unbroken. But if we are going to be doing life better together, that means we may have to get comfortably uncomfortable. What's your shame over, and what are you going to do about it? If you like what you're hearing, please share it with a friend and follow me at Real Janeé Hill